What does it mean to truly love someone when the world measures love in dollars and cents? In the sprawling mansion of Harold Grayson, wealth cast long shadows, but none darker than the hearts of his 3 children, Margaret, Victor, and Elise. Harold, a titan of industry, had built an empire of steel and ambition, but age had softened his edges, leaving him frail and yearning for connection. His children, however, saw only the fortune, not the man. When his health declined, they made a swift decision. A nursing home, far from their glittering lives, would be his final address. They convinced themselves it was for his good, but the truth was colder. They wanted him out of sight, his wealth within reach. Clara, a young nurse at Sunset Haven Nursing Home, met Harold on his first day. He arrived with a single suitcase, his eyes heavy with resignation. The staff whispered about his wealth, about the children who never visited. Clara saw something else, a man whose stories of building a business from nothing carried pride, but whose voice cracked when he spoke of family. She made it her mission to bring light to his days. Each morning, she'd sit with him, listening to tales of his youth, his late wife, and the dreams he'd buried under responsibility. She brought him books, shared her lunch, and laughed at his dry wit. To Clara, he wasn't a billionaire. He was Harold, who loved jazz and hated broccoli. Meanwhile, Margaret, Victor, and Elise were busy. Margaret threw lavish parties, banking on her inheritance to fund her lifestyle. Victor invested in risky ventures, certain his father's fortune would bail him out. Elise, the youngest, dreamed of a penthouse, her visits to Harold limited to hurried calls about his condition. They rarely mentioned him to each other, as if his existence was a footnote in their plans. When they did speak of him, it was to calculate the estate, millions in assets, properties, and stocks. They assumed it would be split 3 ways, as promised in a will they hadn't seen but felt entitled to. Clara, however, grew closer to Harold. She noticed how his face lit up when she brought him a record player, spinning Ella Fitzgerald through the quiet room. She organized game nights, inviting other residents to join, giving Harold a sense of community. One evening, as snow fell outside, Harold confided in her. "My children think I'm a vault to be cracked," he said, his voice a mix of sorrow and clarity. "But you, Clara, you've given me something they never could time." She squeezed his hand, her heart aching for a man who had everything yet felt so alone. Months passed, and Harold's health worsened. Clara stayed by his side, reading to him when he grew too weak to speak. His children visited once, a tense hour filled with forced smiles and glances at their watches. They spoke of his care as if it were a business deal, never noticing the warmth in Clara's eyes or the gratitude in Harold's. When he passed, the news reached his children not with grief, but with anticipation. They gathered at the lawyer's office, dressed in designer clothes, ready to claim their prize. The will was read in a sterile room. Margaret leaned forward, Victor tapped his foot, and Elise clutched her purse. The lawyer's voice was steady. Harold's estate, every cent, every property was left to Clara. The siblings gasped, their faces twisting in disbelief. "She's just a nurse." Margaret spat. "She manipulated him." Victor roared. Elise sat stunned, her dreams crumbling. The lawyer continued. "Harold had rewritten his will months ago, moved by Clara's kindness. She gave me a family when mine forgot me," his letter read. The siblings inherited nothing, not a penny, not a memory. Clara, unaware of the will, was at Sunset Haven, comforting another resident. When the lawyer found her, she thought it was a mistake. Millions? She didn't want it. But Harold's letter, tucked in the envelope, changed her mind. He asked her to use the money to help others, to fund care for those abandoned, to bring light to forgotten corners. Tears in her eyes, Clara vowed to honor him. The siblings fought the will, their greed fueling lawsuits that went nowhere. They blamed each other, their bond as fractured as their dreams. Clara, meanwhile, opened a foundation in Harold's name, turning his wealth into homes, meals, and care for the elderly. She never forgot his stories, his laugh, or the lesson he left her. Love isn't measured by what you take, but by what you give. In the end, the question lingered: who truly deserved Harold's legacy? The answer was clear in the lives Clara touched, in the warmth she spread, and in the memory of a man who found family in a stranger's kindness.